Here I am one day, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing chest compressions in the ICU. 5:30 in the morning, I'm getting a call from my wife at that time, crying, saying the FBI's at the door with an indictment. Your life is going to change forever. I lost everything. I lost my wife, my house, all my bank accounts. Any possession that you do own is going to go. And everything went away.
What's going on, guys? Dan Wise, Federal Prison Time Consulting, Artapp. Dan, happy 2025. Decided to do a video today. As you remember, one of our guests who we had on here who went to federal prison, Shan Sultan, who was a medical doctor, got indicted, went through the process, went to prison, came out of prison. Shan, how are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing very well, Dan. First of all, it's wonderful to talk to you. It's like, two friends you meet in the past. I was thinking in my head, man, it's almost, 5 years?
The last time we've been on video, it's been about 4 or 5 years. We've been communicating through email, phone, text message. You've even spoken to a couple of our recent clients that came across your blog about Lewisburg, that you would send us emails from prison, and we would use that info to kind of show people that it's not the end of the world. That's why it's so important to focus on the sentencing mitigation tactics.
My name is Shan Sultan. I was a pretty renowned physician. I violated the shark law. I mean, there's really no way around it. That's the best way I can explain this. And I basically became one of the top doctors in the South to a convicted felon, due to my own actions. And it was a very, 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 very difficult time. The bottom line is, I ended up going to federal prison. The key thing I want to reiterate here, and the main reason I'm actually doing this video, it's not that bad. But you have to follow strategy. Like I'm taking this approach because I was able to rebuild my life somewhat successfully as well outside healthcare, but I did it through a structured manner. That's the whole purpose of these videos. I really want to help people.
If you want to watch any of, I think we did 1 or 2 videos with Sean plus a blog, and I think I might have even done some additional videos while he was in. There's links down below. But Sean, take people back a little bit, because right now, probably the average person that's watching this video is under federal indictment or getting ready to go to prison. When you first got indicted, how did that affect your personal life, and what did it do to like your family? Because I think at one point you were like living on a friend's couch. You went from being a doctor to couch surfer. So what was that process like?
So when you're indicted, it's just, I'm smiling because it's quite comical to sort of think about what happens in this world when you're indicted. But the bottom line is, as a professional, I don't care if you're a lawyer, doctor, anybody that's license-based, even if you're a trader, you lose everything. So for me, here I am one day, I will never forget this. 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing chest compressions in the ICU. 5:30 in the morning, I'm getting a call from my wife at that time, crying, saying the FBI's at the door with an indictment. Your life is going to change forever. Now, change can be good or can be bad. We can talk about how you can sort of change that trajectory. But for me, absolutely. If you're a professional, when you're indicted, your life will change forever. I lost everything. I lost my house. I lost all my bank accounts. I lost my wife at that time. Any possession that you do own is going to go. I mean, as long as you follow the law. I mean, certainly my case was a stroke law violation. It wasn't opioids. It wasn't Medicare fraud. Something as stupid as because you owned a pharmacy and you own a medical practice, you have to go to prison.
Well, take people through that a little bit, because they're hearing you say that. What exactly did you do?
I was a physician who was practicing, and per the federal government, there was a $500 million case in the state of Mississippi where I was practicing, where they said that physicians cannot own compound pharmacies. At that time, topical medication was a very big thing. Mississippi was moving away from opioids, so people that were in pain would take topical medication. And their biggest premise to me was, as a doctor, you cannot own the pharmacy and the practice. Because I own the actual pharmacy and I own the compound pharmacy and many of the formulas, that I'm writing prescriptions unnecessarily.
Now, quick question: is that state specific? Because, like on my case, when I got indicted for the drug conspiracy, the whole reason we moved the operation from Florida to Georgia, because Florida had a similar law to where a pain clinic you couldn't have a pain clinic and a pharmacy in the same location. However, in Georgia, you could. So that was one of the reasons we were trying to escape the law. Did you have a similar situation to that?
Well, it was a federal law. The law is the law. A physician cannot own anything dealing with a pharmacy or pharmaceutical practice, opioids or non-opioids. I'm one of the few physicians that, and I always tell this to other doctors I meet, went to prison for non-opioids, non-Medicare fraud. So you asked me what was my mindset at that point. When I was indicted, everything went away. I was involved with that indictment for 6 months in 2014, and they indicted me in 2019. And it was a complete surprise. There was no indications, and when I got the indictment, I was like, it was a big shock, and everything went away. Imagine being a doctor. I was a medical director of the second largest hospital in Mississippi. Everything goes away. Again, an indictment's going to change your life forever. So I empathize with you guys. If you guys are being indicted, I understand. Life is going to be very, very difficult. You have to understand something. You will get through this. You just need tools. You need structure. You need procedure. Dan, someone put me in the right mindset.
And at one point, you were facing quite a bit more time than what you actually ended up getting sentenced to.
So my initial indictment had me facing probably 40, 50 years. The main purpose was every prescription that I wrote was a 5-year sentence. So if you sort of view this with a sort of a cumulative sort of perspective, I was a very long time. In fact, my PSR recommended a minimum of 10 years.
And these are the kind of things that a lot of people are really spun out on because they see that. And we both know a lot of it is the tactic the government plays, kind of beating you down, dragging you through this. But when you see those initial numbers, it can be jaw shocking to the point where you want to go on the run, you start sleepless nights, anxiety, suicidal thoughts. A lot of this, and you always seem to be somewhat in good spirit, trying to maintain a pro-social lifestyle while you were mitigating through this. At what point did you reach out and say, hey, as much as I want to get through this on my own, I think I could use help from somebody like Dan or a consulting service? Because you did reach out to us and it seemed like there were some areas that you could tighten up on.
Number one, I think you and I are quite personable, and I thought I could relate to you. And, I reached out to some other services, and they'd literally, I won't even mention the individual's name, wanted $15,000. And I was shocked. You were the only person that said, hey, don't worry about it. We'll take care of this. So I saw your videos, and I think after a first phone call, I was like, look, I think he's the guy I want to work with. And I really mean that. And you really helped me a lot, Dan. I really felt like that you cared.
Well, yeah, we do, because I was in the same situation you were in, going through a federal indictment, and kind of the uncertainty of what was next really for me was the worst case, not knowing what was going to happen, what I was going to tell my kids. But a lot of that's why right now there's a link in the description of this video for a free consultation, because that free phone call, that first phone call, a lot of people are looking at this scenario, Sean, and they're like, well, this is my indictment. This is what it's going to be. Why should I call somebody? There's nothing that they can do that my attorney can't do. And I think it's important to separate the difference. We're not here to replace your attorney or to tell your attorney how to do their job. There is a level of accountability where we'll help you hold your attorney accountable to a different standard. But it's the mitigating factors that most white collar, first time nonviolent offenders that they don't really know to do. They're thinking the judge is going to see that I'm a good person. The judge is going to see that I'm a father. The judge is going to see that I have kids at home, and they don't sentence people like me to prison. And the reality is, and you can vouch for this, Sean, that when you get in front of that judge has sentenced 1 million people just like you that are first time, nonviolent, relatively good people that made some poor choices. But the personal narratives, preparing for your pre-sentence report, what you can do. We're dealing with a guy right now that we spoke to that's really struggling with the whole Artapp concept because he didn't prepare early enough on. And then when you get this sentence, because maybe you think, well, I'm going to get probation. You kind of got that built in your head, or maybe your attorney alluded to that. And then you get a sentence where it's carrying some federal prison time, and you start to really freak the F out. And sometimes it's too late. So that first initial phone call of talking to myself or talking to Sean, you may not even hire us to do anything, but that free advice that you could get in that 10, 15-minute phone call, that could change the whole pathway of everything that comes next.
One thing I'm going to say is that you have to understand something there. I don't care how much money you have or how much cash you have, you're going to lose against the federal government. I think the biggest gambit right now in the litigation field are federal cases. You're wasting your money. Dan can vouch for this. I can vouch for this. You're wasting your money. You're not going to beat the federal government.
Right now, somebody's watching this video and they're saying, Sean, you're probably right, but my attorney used to be a prosecutor, or my attorney is really close with the judge, or my attorney has dinner with the government on a regular basis. If I had a nickel for every time I was told this, we could do prison consulting for free for a lifetime. So talk about that a little bit, because as much as you're correct, a lot of people, though, they're going through this and they're thinking, well, not my scenario. They think their situation is unique, and trying to break them out of that mindset. Like you said early on, we spoke a lot about mindset, trying to break the reality to, let's just be real, a white collar individual who's used to paying their way through things, used to the buck stops here. You're coming up against a brick wall that you've never met before. So this broken mentality that you have, where you think you can buy your way through this, or your influence is going to step you into the next area. This is where most people probably struggle the most. When I have somebody that's not a white collar individual, where they're more blue collar, they're typically a lot more reasonable in the concept, because they're not used to making all of the decisions in their household and in their business or their practice. And you experienced that hands-on. You were, like you said, you're doing chest compressions the day you found out that your life kind of tumbled down. That is a contradicting from the peak to the low valley, all within like matter of minutes. So drive that nail home, because that's the part that really makes people save their money, save their sanity, save their family, and potentially serve a lot less of a sentence.
My attorney was fabulous. He instilled in my head, you're not going to beat them. I'm not going to take your money to take this to trial because it's stupid. You're not going to beat the federal government. I spent time with people, too, that were actually billionaires. So if you're sitting there as a physician or as an attorney, you're making your $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year. You're thinking your attorney's going to get you out of this. He's not going to. And the attorneys, they're not bad people. A lot of them are former prosecutors, but this is the way how they make money. But if former prosecutors were able to have some special pill or some special motion, why is the conviction rate gone up by 0.4? It's 98.6% right now. When it comes to white collar crime, or innocent or guilty, if they indict you, you have to prepare to go to prison. And I'm telling you this because if I knew this ahead of time, I would have really saved myself a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety.
There are some situations, we have had some clients that were definitely looking at prison sentences, and because of the dynamics, the type of crime, the ownership, the responsibility they did take, we do see people that from time to time do end up with probated sentences. You're completely right. You really want to wrap your mind around that. Okay, these are your charges. This is your indictment. This is what you're pleading guilty to. These are your guidelines that recommend a prison sentence, which more than likely, even if the judge goes below the guidelines, you're more than likely still looking at some sort of prison sentence. So if the client, the defendant, shouldn't be focusing so much on trying to beat their case, where are they better off spending their effort? What can they be focusing on when it comes to mitigating? Because a lot of the stuff that you do now takes precedent of how you can shorten your sentence, at sentencing, by showing the judge your responsibility and getting a shorter sentence, and then qualifying for programs that can further reduce your sentence in prison. So let's take people through that a little bit, and then we're going to talk about how much time you actually served on your sentence and what that time was like.
The only way that you can get yourself out of any bad situation is one word. It's called remorse. And how you show remorse. First thing you have to accept is you did commit a crime. I think the whole point of prison consulting is getting you to understand you have to show remorse to get a better sentence.
And I think Sean is 100% right. Our whole focus on seeing the best possible outcome, it starts with acceptance of responsibility. Look, if you're 100% innocent and you didn't do it and you're wrongly convicted, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to take a plea deal. You might want to bite the bullet on that one just because of your principles. But if you let that door get open at any purpose, you allowed them to walk through the door, and you got to take accountability early on. But the next steps are how you separate yourself from the average person that's also taking responsibility. The judge looks at you and says, okay, you're taking acceptance of responsibility because you want a shorter sentence, which we're going to give you through a plea deal. But if you want to take that to the next step, what's going to be different about your acceptance of responsibility? What's going to be different about your personal narrative? When you prepare it, what goes into it, what your friends and family are saying about you, Or is it going to look like every other letter that the judge has read? My name is Sean. I'm going to prison. This is going to be really hard on my wife. I own what I did, but you're really punishing my wife. How you take responsibility and you don't pass the blame and you show that you understand victims of your crime. We deal with a lot of people, Sean, that think they have victimless crimes because there's no intended loss or nobody got directly hurt. But tell me if I'm wrong. You're divorced over this. You drag your family through it. You can drag your kids through it. You can drag your best friends through it because they're watching somebody they've known their whole life who relatively maybe they looked up to, or your kids look up to you if you have kids. And then they see you go through this process where it's like, man, what the fuck did you do? And a lot of times we don't really want to own it fully. We say what we need to say to get a plea deal. But if you can truly fall on that sword and show the judge that not only are you taking acceptance responsibility, but you're making the necessary changes now by defining what it is that you did wrong and understanding the criminal thinking and where you were crossing gray areas, that can go the length of a football field when you get in front of a judge because it's showing the judge something that they're not used to seeing.
Well, you and I were talking about this. I think that was a great game plan that we had. Look, I was building a career before I even went into prison. I lost my medical license. I accepted the fact that being a doctor, it's not impossible. It's been very difficult. And the judge loved the fact that I had enrolled back into college. Look, I medical graduate, residency, you name it. I literally enrolled back in Adams State University, which is the only accredited university. I got a paralegal degree. I started looking at personal training. And when I wrote my narrative, I spoke to Jenny, who does a very good job. And we said, look, I have a game plan. There's no reason to put me in prison for 10 years. I have a game plan that I will rebuild my life. And again, what does remorse mean? Remorse means that you have a plan to repay back victims. You have a plan for accountability. By showing remorse and saying, hey, I messed up. I apologize. I'm not the victim. I created victims. Here's my plan to rebuild my life. That's what they want to hear. They don't care that, that you're getting divorced. They don't care that your kids don't have a father. Well, you made that decision. But what are decisions you're making moving forward to improve your life? Number one is community service.
Let's talk about the community service just for a moment, because you brought up a good point. So community service, most white collar guys, first time nonviolent offenders, they do get involved in some level of community service, whether it's like soup kitchens, cleaning up parks, things like this. But let's take you for an example. Sean, you're a doctor, you went to medical school. Instead of you going to like the soup kitchen or picking up whatever, handing out TV dinners to the homeless. Imagine if Sean goes back to the school that he got his medical license from and goes back and speaks to those students about the mistakes that he made and now how he's likely going to federal prison, creating that holy shit in front of these pre-med students that now can see Sean's mistakes and learn from his cautionary tale. Stuff like that, not just getting you to do the community service. We really want to see you go above and beyond what the average person's doing. And many individuals that are watching this are going to go, well, the judge is just going to see that I'm doing these things to look good. It doesn't matter what your initial intent is. Your intent can be just to get a shorter sentence. But when you start doing the right thing, no matter what the reason you're doing it for, after 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, after a year of doing this, you really start to see the value and feel better about yourself because you're inherently becoming a much better person. Did you find yourself doing any type of community service that really kind of excelled and showcased the vulnerability side of what you did?
Remember, I did our videos before I was sentenced. So I should be very clear that community service has to be intrinsic. It can't be something that you're going to quote unquote fake. You really have to believe in it. When I went through this I'm going to make some videos. I don't care if it hurts my sentence so other people don't make my same mistakes. I know the prosecutor saw my videos. I think they found that helpful, that here's a guy, he's lost everything, but yet he still cares enough to go on a video and talk about stuff.
That's also a great point because we have a lot of our clients when they're in the pretrial phase or even after sentencing or right before sentencing, when we invite them to come on here, we're doing this because of what Sean just said. A lot of people will go, well, I don't want the government to see this. If you're truly taking responsibility for what you've done, we've never seen this hurt somebody. It's quite the opposite. We see the work that we do and the videos that like Sean has done. We see this carry impact with the government. And I keep telling people, if you do the right thing for the right reasons, typically things start to fall into your favor, whether it's a shorter sentence, you find a new career out of this, you find new purpose to wake up every day. Part of the battle of prison consulting isn't just to get you the shortest sentence. It really is to get your mindset into the right headspace so you can prepare for the journey. And preparing for your release from prison should start well before you ever step foot in prison, which is why Shan is probably successful now. It was the most beautiful thing getting an email from Shan. It was an email or a phone call about a year ago. All the text message said was, Dan, guess what? I'm successful again. I love hearing this because this is what people fear. People think they are going to be defined by this very moment they're in going to federal prison, where they're going to be working at some job they hate for the rest of their life. And that's just not the case, is it, Shan?
Sentence mitigation, it has to be structured. If you follow the structure, you will get the best possible outcome. It may not be the outcome that you desire, but it is the best possible outcome. And the first thing is you have to want to give back to society, whatever aspect that may be.
And when you talk about sentencing mitigation, because this is where a lot of it think, well, when it comes to like Artapp, the residential drug abuse program, which most people come across us because they're early on when they do start to realize they're probably looking at prison time, they start to look at what they can do to start shaving off some time. So obviously the drug program, the residential drug abuse program, which is a 500-hour cognitive behavior therapy program, which is not at every prison. So you really do want to take the early on sentencing mitigation portion very serious, because the judge cannot sentence you to Artapp. It has nothing to do with what the judge does or what the judge recommends. It has everything to do with most of you are going to take a plea deal. And after you do your plea deal, you're going to do a pre-sentence interview with U.S. probation, where they're going to go over your substance abuse, your history. During that process is probably one of the most important meetings that you're going to have throughout this entire thing, because what you say during that interview can really dictate the path and the segue of where you're going to go next. That's one of the reasons why we have this free consultation, because sometimes the attorneys, not that they're not trying to give you this information, it's just not their main focus. And by talking to somebody that's been through the program, Shan did Artapp. He can tell you a little bit about what Artapp was like where he was at. I can tell you what Artapp was like where I was at. But the thing is it doesn't matter what Artapp is like. You have to make sure that you can get into Artapp first off. Again, if I had a nickel for every time somebody told me, oh, well, my judge ordered it or my judge recommended it. And when you try to tell somebody, no, doesn't work that way, they almost look at you like, you're full of shit. You're lying to me. And I wish that were the case, but a judge can't do that. So Shan, when you're talking about sentencing mitigation, obviously taking responsibility and getting yourself out there, repaying the community, that's key for your mindset. But at what point should somebody go, okay, my attorney is working on this. What role should myself be taking on as a client to mitigate for myself? Because I believe no one's going to work harder for you than you are.
Well, Dan, you hit the nail on the head. There's nothing wrong by saying, hey, maybe I did drink too much alcohol prior to my indictment. Maybe I did, do X, Y, and Z. The more open you are as a human being about really like what your real issues are, the government will actually help you. That's where Artapp comes into place. The whole nonsense. I think there was a group in, I forget where, there were a lawyer group. They went to prison because they were telling, people to come and intoxicate, the whole 9 yards, all that nonsense.
Smart.
So I've had some personal people reach out to me that were indicted. Just be honest. If you need help, you need help. Programs are set up for you to become a better person. Do not lie. Don't falsify. Just be honest.
I think a lot of it is you've got people that, let's say, like for me, I got indicted in 2011. I didn't take my plea deal until 2013. So then you're doing your pre-sentence interview, and date ranges, date frames, what you should say, what your attorney maybe told you not to say. There's a lot of either misinformation or lack of information. So when you're sitting there and the probation officer says, do you have a drinking problem or did you have a drinking problem? Your mind frame starts to go, I don't want to get myself in more trouble, or I'm out on pretrial probation. I don't want to get revoked. I'm embarrassed. I don't want my family to know. And you don't necessarily know how important it is to be honest in that very moment. That's the whole purpose of these videos. And that's why when you schedule a free consultation, that 15 minutes, again, I can't stress it enough. It sounds like I'm selling a book over here, is going to help you make more informed decisions on what you do next and how you hold your attorney accountable. So I don't think Shan's saying that most people are lying or they don't want to talk about it. They don't know how important it is. Or they're like, oh, I was just a weekend warrior. I'm not an alcoholic. I wasn't smacking heroin into my arm behind an alley. I smoked weed every now and then. I drank on the weekends. These are things that could qualify you for the program.
You have no idea how important that PSR interview is. You won't realize how important that is until you're in prison. I would spend more money preparing for my PSR interview than I would fighting my case. And
amen.
I know people that spend money in prison, hundreds of thousands of dollars to get one line change in their PSR interview. That PSR interview is more important than your plea deal. If you say one wrong thing, you're going to be spending years extra in prison. And that's where Dan sort of got my head straight. He said, forget about the case. And we talked about what a PSR means. We talked about what's important, what's not important. The most important thing is to be honest. Do not lie. If you lie, you try to force this, it's nonsense. But you and I both know, guys, that I'm sure there are doctors, lawyers listening to this. You and I both know you guys have problems. Be honest about the problems. Don't minimize the problems. But that should be something that I'm surprised more people don't focus on.
I think people just don't know what they don't know. You know, a lot of times they don't know how important it is until A, it's too late, or they stumble across one of these videos at 3 a.m. when they can't sleep at night and they're like, oh, federal prison. Your prison comes up a lot because it's a very popular prison for white collar. So your videos and your blog comes up a lot, which has been fantastic to really educate people. So talking about your crime, Sean, how much time did you get sentenced to?
So my PSR had me at 120 months. Dan and I worked together. We came with a game plan. And I ended up being sentenced 48 months.
And how much time did you serve on your 48 months, Sean?
So here's the crazy part. Even during COVID, even with no halfway house, I only spent 22 months. I was supposed to only spend 18 months. But what happened was, due to COVID restrictions at the Baltimore halfway house, I had to spend 22 months.
How long were you there before you got into Artapp?
I was 9 months, about a year.
Yeah, with a lot of the guys that we're working with, part of the goal is depending on what your sentence is, you know, because obviously Artapp is it's not what you're sentenced to, it's how much time you have remaining on your sentence when you go into the program. So you've got guys, you have to have a minimum of a 24-month sentence to get into Artapp. So people will get this 24-month sentence and like, oh great, I'm going to get into Artapp. But what they don't realize is when they get to prison, Artapp may not start for 2 or 3 months before you get there.
Right.
So prepping for this, we do things like self-surrender extensions, where if we know what your date is and we know where you're going, we can now find out when the next class starts, and chances are it's not going to line up with your start date. So by putting in for a self-surrender extension, which I would say we probably get 90% of those approved, that can make, again, all of the difference in finding out after the fact. It's like the kiss of death. If you know that it's, look, if you don't qualify for RDAP, that's one thing. But if you don't qualify for RDAP due to a technicality, that's like an extra slap to the face.
Your goal is to get in, be interviewed by the RDAP director before phase 1 starts. Now, if you don't qualify, it's not the end of the world. It's not like, oh my God, well, work on your FSA credits, which is First Step Act credits, which we can probably talk hours about. Work on bettering yourself. It's not the end of the world. And again, there's structure and process to all this. But the most important thing Dan is hitting on, it's actually very, 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 very important. You need to go in 2 weeks before the class starts. I always 2 weeks before the class starts. Well, how do I know when class starts? That's not a problem.
We rely very heavily on you, Sean. Like when you're inside, we keep contact with our clients and we build an inside network where we find out, hey, when is the next program? The cool thing that Sean touched on a little bit when you talk about the FSA, the First Step Act, if you do qualify for RDAP and you're also qualifying for your FSA credits and you have a lengthier sentence, like let's say sentence like Sean, like 48 months, where you can definitely get your year off for RDAP. You can also probably get very close to a year with FSA, but you double dip. You get your sentence reduction for RDAP, and you can also get your 10 to 15 days per 30 days while you're in RDAP for that as well. So RDAP is the only class that lets you double dip, where you get sentence reduction for the time off for RDAP and you get the time off for the First Step Act. It's just knowing the information that you don't know today. I think what you've done for yourself, Sean, is a testament to what other people can do. You know, there's nothing overly unique about you other than you took the time to navigate this system, take the necessary time, and realize that it's not an overnight process. You know, change is a process. It's not some immediate event.
You said, Sean, I made something out of nothing. And those words really stuck with me. You made something out of nothing.
I still look back on my own journey and my own time and remembering coming home and thinking to myself, I'd only known that it wasn't going to be the end of the world. How do I convey this to somebody right now that's sitting in their house, staring at their child sleeping, going, how am I going to tell this to my kid? It's very important for people to see where you are. Okay, this guy was a doctor. And now he's home and he's talking about being as successful as he was.
I became the best because I was structured, I was well thought out, and I learned that from you. You built something from nothing. And when you're indicted, you're at nothing. Does not mean that you're worthless. Those are two different words. Not worthless. It means you're just beginning. Your life is beginning. And look at me. You know, I live a very, very happy life. I'm able to live all my dreams again. And so can you.
Well, Shan, inspiring. This is definitely to be continued. I'm Dan Wise, Federal Prison Time Consulting, People Up in People, Communities Method, one day at a time. All right, guys, talk to you soon. I'm out of here. Peace.